Hi, this is János, it's Real World Audio, and let's talk more about the frequency extension capabilities of single driver speakers, single drivers, and the sound colorations. How do these affect each other, and what the manufacturers can do about it, and what you can do about it. So first of all, like getting a driver working as wideband as possible, it's a very extremely difficult task, and that requires getting skills at driver building at a much higher level than building a driver for a very narrow range of frequencies. That is peanuts compared to the challenge of designing a wideband driver. And that's why today most drivers are so narrow range, are so specialized into a small region, because it's much easier to do and it doesn't really take rocket science. And even though on paper they are advertising them to you as, wow, latest technology, let's jump out of our bed, but really one reason for that is that it's much easier to design than designing a wideband driver. So for a wideband driver, you need several things to happen. I'm not going through all of them because that would take several videos. Now I just look at two things. One of them, as you know, if you take a driver and you want to work it at a wider frequency range, then you need a stronger motor to drive it, because you will need to keep it on track for a wider range of frequencies, and to be able to extend the frequencies on both ends, you will need stronger and stronger motor. And that does not just mean a stronger magnet in the motor, but it means that the voice coil gap, you need to focus the magnetic energy more to that place so that your driver will be under better control, under tighter control. That's one thing. So that's a really big challenge for single driver manufacturers, and that's why you will see that single drivers have so much stronger motors than your average multi-drivers that which are the narrow band drivers. And that's one guarantee why they can do that task, is because they have a very strong motor. And for a narrow band driver, even if you let it play without a crossover, it won't work like a full range driver, because it does not have the strength to do it, and second, it does not have the mechanical build to do it. So it's going to have breakup modes, it's going to have issues, it can do it. So a single driver is a very different breed from a normal narrow band driver. However, it's still a challenge for single driver manufacturers how to extend the frequency extremes. For high-end, it's relatively easier, because either like having a special dust cap, playing around with the phase plug, or playing around with the visor cone, it's relatively easy to get high frequency extension out to high frequencies, to like 20 kilohertz or even higher. The issue is the other end, the low end. And the problem is that the real problem is not really extension, because we can add the extension, but the problem is to keep it at an efficient level. So to keep the efficiency, to keep the sensitivity high. And when we keep the sensitivity high, that's when any discrepancy between the visor cone or dust cap and the main cone will be bigger and bigger and bigger. Now, if we use a dust cap for high frequency generation, then the discrepancy won't be big, because it's well integrated into the main cone. Basically, the main cone is the continuation of your dust cap. So with that, it's much easier to integrate that into a high frequency to the rest, But when you have a visor cone, then usually the tendency is that with the visor cone you have much higher amplification, acoustic amplification, much higher efficiency for the frequencies generated with the visor cone than those generated by your main cone. And these discrepancies will be bigger and bigger as the efficiency of the driver goes higher. So that's why several of the louder drivers, which are extremely efficient single drivers, they have this notoriously bad reputation about colorations, is because their high frequencies, starting from the upper mid-range on up, they respond to they have much higher sensitivity compared to rest of the band. And how that translates is that when you have a higher volume singing, let's say there's a singer, there's Jose Carrera singing Missa Solemnis or whatever, and when he sings quietly, then his voice sounds balanced, and when he's getting louder, then the upper mid-range and highs are disproportionately getting louder than his fundamental tone, than the mid-range and the bass. And that gives the really nasty reputation for some single driver speakers, and a lot of people just oversimplify the situation and say that, oh, if one speaker or maybe two or three does it, then all of them must do it. But that's not the case, not at all. And what single driver manufacturers have been and are trying to do is to try get like efficiency as high as possible, and keeping the wide range of frequency as wide, with as less discrepancy between the upper mid-range and the rest of the spectrum, so to keep them level. And now even with these attempts, what we notice is that from the mid bass, at the mid bass we see that there's a drop in level. So, and that drop in the level, if your room works well with your speaker, then the mid bass will be nice and even. But if your room doesn't help with it, then you will hear something that sounds to you that we are lacking mid bass. And yeah, there are some single driver speakers which truly lack mid bass, and doesn't matter what room you put them in, they won't have mid bass. But I'm talking about the ones which are properly designed and built, and they will have good mid bass, but you need to think about the room where you place in. So if you have a room that demands extra energy to be put to the mid bass, then single driver speakers will not work there. However, there's one driver that I've noticed so far, and that's the Cube Audio driver, which has solved that particular sensitivity of single drivers compared to a multi-driver system. So today this is the only one I have met that is not more sensitive in the mid bass and low bass region to room and to placement than multi-driver systems are. And how did they do it? And my response is that they did it by keeping the efficiency, the sensitivity lower. And when you keep the sensitivity lower, that's when you can widen the frequency range. And with the structure of the driver, structure of the motor, they have, and the cone materials used, they have achieved to extend the strength of the motor to the mid bass and low bass. And basically my experience so far is that the FC8 single driver in my void pipe, it has literally shamed multi-driver speakers in the bass that I tried it against with. And so really, it's not because it's a single driver it can't do mid bass or it can't do low bass. No, it's the approach, it's the execution, and a single driver speaker can get much higher quality mid bass than a similarly priced multi-driver speaker. Of course, you will find a multi-driver speaker that has better bass than the Cube Audio in my Void Pipe, but at the price range which is so ridiculously higher that we are not talking about a fair comparison. So when in the fair comparison land, and then talking about expectations, keeping them real, then for single drivers they can extend very low, and you can gauge that if you have lower efficiency single drivers, they will be better at giving you a stronger, fuller mid-range, but they will not sound as dynamic. If you are going for a dynamic single driver, you will have much higher efficiency, much better dynamic response, but the mid bass and low end will seem much thinner. Make no mistake, it will be still very high quality, but you need to have ears to hear that. If you don't have good ears, you don't have good skills in hearing mid bass, hearing low bass, you will think that you are missing it out and you want to buy a sub. But is it the real thing to do? Will that be a solution for life? I'm going to go into that in the next video. Bye bye.